What happens when Hollywood's most beloved Batman confronts late-night television's supposed golden boy in a battle that nobody saw coming? You won't believe what unfolds when Ben Affleck sits down for what should have been a routine promotional interview, only to find himself in the crosshairs of Jimmy Kimmel's most vicious interrogation yet. This isn't your typical celebrity banter. This is a full-scale war of words that erupted live on national television, leaving audiences stunned and social media in absolute chaos. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two Hollywood heavyweights go head-to-head in the most explosive confrontation late-night TV has ever witnessed. The tension was palpable from the moment Ben Affleck walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live stage. What started as promotional appearance for his latest directorial project quickly transformed into something far more sinister. Affleck, clearly expecting the usual softball questions and playful ribbing that Kimmel was known for, settled into his chair with the casual confidence of someone who had done this dance 1,000 times before. But something was different about Kimmel's demeanor tonight. There was a predatory gleam in his eyes that suggested this interview was going to be anything but routine. "Ben, great to have you back," Kimmel began with his signature smile, but those who knew him well could detect the underlying edge in his voice. "You know, I've been thinking about our friendship over the years, and I have to ask, do you ever get tired of playing the victim?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Affleck's eyebrows furrowed as he processed what had just been said. The studio audience, expecting their usual dose of celebrity camaraderie, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the warm welcome they were accustomed to seeing on Kimmel's show. "I'm sorry, what?" Affleck replied, his voice carrying a note of genuine confusion mixed with growing irritation. "Jimmy, what are you talking about?" Kimmel leaned back in his chair, his smile never wavering but somehow becoming more menacing. "Oh, come on, Ben. The gambling addiction, the divorce drama, the Batman backlash. It's always something with you, isn't it? Always some sob story about how Hollywood or the media or the fans have wronged you." The color began to drain from Affleck's face as he realized this wasn't going to be the friendly chat he had anticipated. His publicist, sitting in the wings, looked visibly alarmed as she recognized the dangerous territory this conversation was heading into. The camera operators, following their director's cues, began to tighten their shots, sensing that something unprecedented was about to unfold. "Jimmy, I came here to talk about my new film," Affleck said, his voice steady but with an unmistakable warning tone. "I don't know what kind of angle you're going for here, but maybe we should stick to why I'm actually here." But Kimmel wasn't backing down. If anything, Affleck's attempt to redirect seemed to embolden him further. "But that's exactly what I'm talking about, Ben. Even now you're trying to control the narrative. You can't just answer a simple question about your pattern of behavior without deflecting." The audience was beginning to murmur among themselves, sensing that they were witnessing something far removed from the typical late-night entertainment they had come to expect. Some were pulling out their phones, already anticipating that this moment would need to be captured and shared. The energy in the studio had shifted from anticipation to uncomfortable tension. Affleck's jaw tightened visibly as he leaned forward in his chair. "Pattern of behavior? Jimmy, what the hell is this really about? Because if you have something to say to me, just say it instead of hiding behind this passive-aggressive interrogation routine." "There it is," Kimmel said, pointing at Affleck as if he had just proven his point. "The famous Affleck temper. You know, people always wonder why your relationships fall apart, why projects get derailed, why you can't seem to stay out of your own way. Maybe it's because you can't handle it when someone calls you out on your nonsense." The words hit Affleck like a physical blow. His hands gripped the arms of his chair as he struggled to maintain his composure. Years of friendship, of shared experiences, of mutual respect, All of it seemed to evaporate in that moment as Kimmel's true intentions became crystal clear. "You want to talk about relationships falling apart?" Affleck's voice was low and dangerous now. "Let's talk about how you've built your entire career on humiliating people for cheap laughs. Let's talk about how you hide your own insecurities behind this facade of being America's sweetheart, while you systematically tear down everyone around you." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath as they realized they were documenting something that would likely be talked about for years to come. Kimmel's smile finally began to crack, but rather than backing down, he seemed to relish the fact that he had successfully gotten under Affleck's skin. "Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for asking legitimate questions?" Kimmel shot back. "Ben, you've been in the public eye for decades. You've made millions of dollars from that public attention. But the moment someone asks you to be accountable for your actions, suddenly you're the victim again." Affleck stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward from the force of his movement. The audience gasped audibly as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in the usually controlled world of late-night television. His hands were shaking slightly. Whether from anger or adrenaline, it was impossible to tell. "Accountable for what, Jimmy?" Affleck's voice was rising now, his famous composure completely shattered. "For being human? For making mistakes? For going through difficult times in my life and having the audacity to be honest about them? I came here as your friend, and you're treating me like I'm some criminal on trial." But Kimmel wasn't finished. Like a shark that had tasted blood in the water, he seemed determined to press his advantage. "Friend? Ben, let's be honest about what this friendship really is. You show up on my show when you need to promote something, we trade some jokes, and then you disappear until the next project. That's not friendship, that's a transaction." The words hung in the air like an accusation, and everyone in the studio could feel the weight of what had just been said. This wasn't just a disagreement between two celebrities. This was the public destruction of what many had believed to be a genuine friendship. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every moment of this unprecedented meltdown. But the silence that followed Kimmel's words suggested that even he might have realized he had crossed a line from which there might be no return. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Affleck stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and rage, while Kimmel sat smugly in his chair, apparently pleased with the devastation he had just unleashed. The studio audience had gone from uncomfortable murmuring to dead silence, sensing they were witnessing something that would fundamentally change late-night television forever. Then Affleck laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that made everyone in the room flinch. "A transaction," he repeated slowly, his voice dripping with contempt. "You know what, Jimmy? You're absolutely right. This whole thing has been a transaction. But not the way you think." He began pacing behind his chair, his movements sharp and agitated. "I've been paying for years, paying with my dignity, my privacy, my family's privacy, all so you could get your cheap laughs at my expense." Kimmel's composure was beginning to crack as he realized that Affleck wasn't backing down or apologizing as he had expected. Instead, the actor seemed to be gaining momentum, his anger transforming into something more focused and dangerous. "Oh, please," Kimmel scoffed, but there was a nervous edge creeping into his voice. "Don't act like you haven't benefited from this relationship too. How many times have I helped rehabilitate your image when you screwed up? How many times have I given you a platform to explain yourself when the whole world was against you? Helped me?" Affleck's voice rose to a near shout. "You've been dining out on my personal struggles for years. My divorce, my kids, my addiction. It's all been content for your monologue, hasn't it? You sit there night after night making jokes about the lowest points of my life, and then you have the audacity to call yourself my friend?" The audience was completely silent now, many looking visibly uncomfortable as they witnessed this brutal dissection of what they had thought was a genuine Hollywood friendship. Some were starting to realize that they had been complicit in something much darker than they had understood, that their laughter at Kimmel's jokes had been at the expense of a man who was genuinely struggling. "That's what comedians do, Ben," Kimmel replied, but his trademark confidence was wavering. "We comment on current events. We make observations about public figures. It's not personal." "Not personal?" Affleck slammed his hand down on the desk between them, causing Kimmel to jump back in his chair. "You made jokes about my children, Jimmy. You made jokes about my sobriety. You turned my pain into your punchlines, and you did it while pretending to care about me. That's not comedy. That's exploitation." The production crew was frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation. The show's director was making frantic hand gestures, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this unprecedented moment continue to unfold. The network executives watching from their offices were probably having heart attacks, but the ratings were undoubtedly through the roof. Kimmel stood up now, finally meeting Affleck's intensity with his own. "You want to talk about exploitation? Let's talk about how you've used this show, used our friendship, to manage your public image whenever you needed damage control. Every time you had a scandal, every time you needed to look sympathetic, you came running to Uncle Jimmy to make it all better." "Because I thought you actually cared," Affleck shouted back. "I thought when you called me your friend, when you invited me to your house, when you met my kids, I thought that meant something. But you were just collecting material, weren't you? Every private conversation, every vulnerable moment I shared with you, it all ended up in your writer's room." The accusation hit Kimmel like a physical blow, and for the first time since this confrontation began, he looked genuinely shaken. His mouth opened and closed as he struggled to find a response, but the damage was already done. The look on his face suggested that Affleck had hit uncomfortably close to the truth. That's not how it works," Kimmel stammered, his usual quick wit completely deserting him. "Isn't it?" Affleck pressed his advantage, sensing weakness. "How many times did I confide in you about my struggles, and then hear those same struggles turned into jokes on your show? How many private moments became public humiliation because you couldn't resist the material?" The studio audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some were starting to look at Kimmel with new eyes, realizing that perhaps their beloved host wasn't quite the sympathetic figure they had believed him to be. The dynamic in the room was shifting palpably. What had started as an attack on Affleck was transforming into an indictment of Kimmel himself. "Ben, you're being dramatic." Kimmel tried to regain control, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is what we do. This is the business we're in." "No, Jimmy, this is what you do," Affleck shot back. "You hide behind this persona of being the nice guy, the supportive friend, while you systematically destroy people for entertainment. And the worst part? You've convinced everyone, including yourself, that you're the good guy in all of this." Kimmel's face was flushed now, his carefully maintained composure completely shattered. "You ungrateful bastard," he hissed, his mask finally slipping completely. "I've carried you through more scandals than I can count. Without me, without this show, you'd have been canceled years ago." The words revealed everything. The true nature of their relationship, the power dynamic that had existed beneath the surface, and Kimmel's genuine belief that he held some kind of authority over Affleck's career and reputation. It was a moment of shocking honesty that laid bare the toxic reality behind Hollywood's manufactured friendships. Affleck stepped back, a look of disgust crossing his features. "There it is," he said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and revulsion. "The real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the lovable host, not the loyal friend. Just another Hollywood predator who feeds off other people's misery." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the camera operators seemed to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented, the complete destruction of not just a friendship, but of carefully constructed public personas that had taken years to build. What happened next would determine whether this moment became television history or a career-ending disaster for everyone involved. Kimmel's face was a mask of fury and panic as he realized the gravity of what had just transpired. Years of carefully cultivated public goodwill were evaporating in real time, and the studio audience, his audience, was looking at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disgust. He had gone too far, revealed too much, and now he was scrambling to regain control of a situation that had spiraled completely beyond his ability to manage. "Ben, look, maybe we should just—" Kimmel started, his voice shaking as he attempted some form of damage control. "No!" Affleck cut him off with a finality that silenced the entire studio. "We're done here, Jimmy. We're done with the fake friendship. We're done with the manufactured moments, and we're definitely done with you using my life as material for your pathetic excuse for comedy." The actor began removing his microphone. With deliberate, methodical movements, each action punctuated by the deadly quiet that had fallen over the soundstage. The normally bustling energy of a live television production had been replaced by the tense atmosphere of a public execution, and everyone present understood that they were witnessing the death of Jimmy Kimmel's reputation. "You can't just walk out," Kimmel said desperately, his voice cracking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "This is live television. You have obligations. We have a contract." Affleck looked up from fumbling with his microphone, his eyes blazing with an intensity that made several people in the front row actually lean back in their seats. "Obligations? Like the obligation you had as my friend not to exploit my personal tragedies for your monologue? Like the obligation you had to my children not to make them part of your comedy routine? Those kind of obligations, Jimmy?" The microphone came free with a sharp pop that echoed through the studio's sound system. Affleck held it for a moment, looking down at the small device that had captured every word of this devastating confrontation, before setting it deliberately on Kimmel's desk. The gesture was symbolic. He was literally giving back the voice that Kimmel had tried to control and manipulate for years. "Ben, please." Kimmel's voice was barely above a whisper now, but in the absolute silence of the studio, it carried to every corner. "Don't do this. Think about what this means for both of us. What this means." Affleck laughed again, that same bitter sound that had started this final phase of their confrontation. "Jimmy, what this means is that finally, for the first time in years, I'm putting my dignity before your ratings. What this means is that I'm choosing my self-respect over your need for content." The studio audience was transfixed, many of them recording on their phones despite the no-recording policies. They understood they were witnessing something that would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. The moment when the facade of Hollywood friendship was stripped away to reveal the ugly reality beneath. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "The audience came here tonight to see both of us. You're disappointing them. You're disappointing your fans." "My fans?" Affleck's voice rose again, his composure finally cracking completely. "My fans deserve better than watching their entertainment built on the foundation of someone else's pain. These people deserve to know that the laughter you've been giving them has been bought with my blood, my tears, and my family's privacy." He turned to address the audience directly, his voice carrying to every corner of the studio. "I'm sorry you had to see this. I'm sorry your evening of entertainment turned into this ugly display. But I'm not sorry for finally standing up to a bully who's been hiding behind jokes and fake friendship for far too long." The audience sat in stunned silence, many of them nodding slightly as if finally understanding something they had been unconsciously aware of for years. The dynamic had shifted so completely that Kimmel now looked like the villain in his own show, while Affleck had transformed from victim to hero simply by refusing to accept the abuse any longer. Kimmel's face had gone from red to pale, the blood draining as he realized that this moment would define the rest of his career. "Ben, wait! We can work this out. We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" Affleck turned back one final time, his voice filled with disgust. "So you can spin this? So you can figure out how to turn even this moment into material for tomorrow night's show? So you can find a way to make yourself the victim in this story?" He shook his head slowly, a gesture of finality that seemed to close the door on years of manufactured friendship and exploitation. "No, Jimmy. For once, the truth gets to exist without your editorial commentary. For once, someone gets to walk away from you with their dignity intact." The sound of Affleck's footsteps as he walked toward the stage exit seemed unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. Each step was deliberate, purposeful, and irreversible. The cameras followed his movement, capturing every moment of what was clearly the end of an era in late-night television. As he reached the edge of the stage, Affleck paused and looked back one final time. "You know what the saddest part is, Jimmy? I actually did consider you a friend. I trusted you with the most vulnerable parts of my life, and you turned them into entertainment. That's not comedy, that's cruelty." With those final words, Ben Affleck walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, leaving behind a studio full of stunned audience members, a production crew in chaos, and a host whose carefully constructed image had been completely destroyed in the span of 20 minutes. Kimmel sat alone at his desk, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a heavy blanket. The cameras were still rolling, but he seemed to have forgotten they existed. His mouth opened and closed several times as if he were trying to speak, but no words came. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity before someone finally called for commercial break. The damage was done. In one explosive confrontation, years of perceived friendship had been revealed as exploitation, and the beloved late-night host had been exposed as something much darker than his public persona suggested. The audience that had come for entertainment had instead witnessed the complete destruction of everything they thought they knew about Jimmy Kimmel, and they would never be able to unsee what they had witnessed that night.